When Leo was 13, he had a habit of shrinking himself to fit into spaces where no one would bump into him. In the cafeteria, even more than in the hallways, he felt like he was trying to survive an ecosystem built for people louder, brighter, and infinitely more coordinated than he was. Looking back, adult Leo likes to say the school cafeteria was his natural habitat, except he wasn't the predator or the prey. He was the kid who froze when the ecosystem made too much noise, like a leaf floating in a river, hoping not to hit any rocks. On the day of the cafeteria trade, the universe seemed determined to remind him of just how small he felt. It began like any other lunch period. Yeah, Leo waited near the back of the cafeteria line, clutching his tray, trying to keep his head down and blend into whatever shadows existed in a room flooded with buzzing fluorescent lights. The cafeteria smelled like ketchup, warm plastic, and the broken dreams of whoever cooked the pizza that day. Kids were shouting, swapping seats, slapping each other's trays, laughing too loudly at jokes Leo would never hear the beginning of. He shifted from foot to foot, trying to look busy, trying to look like he had somewhere to be, someone waiting for him, something that justified taking up space at all. Years later, Leo adult would admit, at 13, I didn't think I deserved a seat at any table. When he finally reached the front, the cafeteria worker slapped a slice of pizza onto his tray so aggressively that the cheese slid halfway off. He took it anyway. The fries looked soggy, the apple looked bruised, and the chocolate pudding cup looked suspiciously like glue. But Leo knew better than to complain. Food was food. Attention was a risk. He scanned the room. The cafeteria was a battlefield of social territories. Near the windows sat the athletes, loud and confident. In the middle, the popular kids, orbiting around each other like planets around a sun Leo couldn't even see. Off to one side were the theater kids, already rehearsing lines or mimicking accents. And at the far back corner sat the loners, the quiet ones, the invisible kids who were technically in groups but all lived on their own planets. Leo was somewhere between the last two categories, close enough to the loners to be mistaken for one, but not close enough to be part of their little constellation. He chose his table, a small one with one broken chair and a view conveniently located behind a pillar. Perfect for disappearing. He sat down and poked at the fries. They made a sound that fries should never make, a soft plop. He sighed. As he unwrapped his juice box, a shadow fell across the table. Leo flinched. People didn't usually stop in front of him unless he dropped something. He looked up. It was Jake. Jake wasn't a bully, not a friend either. Just one of those normal kids, someone who could exist in any social group without standing out too much. It's just Leo envied people like that. People who could be themselves without their identity becoming a punchline. Jake pointed at Leo's pudding cup. You trading that? Leo blinked. What? Jake tapped the pudding again. My dessert's trash today. I'll swap you my cookie for it. Leo stared at the offering. A cookie, slightly cracked but smelling faintly of chocolate, infinitely more appealing than pudding glue. Like, his throat tightened. He wanted to say something cool, something casual. Instead he said, yeah, okay, if you want. Sure. Jake didn't wait for further clarification. He grabbed the pudding, placed his cookie on Leo's tray, nodded once, and walked away without even looking back. Just like that. Transaction complete. Emotionless, effortless. For Jake, it was probably nothing. For Leo, it was everything. Because Leo's brain did not interpret it as Jake wanted the pudding. No, it interpreted it as he didn't choose you. He chose your dessert. You're replaceable. The voice in his head whispered, you're only valuable for what you can give. He stared at the cookie. He didn't even feel like eating it anymore. Later, adult Leo would call this moment one of his first experiences of emotional misinterpretation. Back then, it felt like truth. He pushed the cookie away and lowered his head. The cafeteria noise faded, replaced by the static hum of his negative thoughts. Maybe Jake never even saw him. Maybe nobody ever did. After lunch, kids filed out. The cafeteria emptied. Leo lingered behind, pretending to tie his shoe until the room was almost silent. Only then did he hear the familiar bzzz sound. The air next to a row of empty chairs rippled like heat on asphalt. And Neo stepped into view. Same age, same face, same height. But with a confidence Leo could barely comprehend. Neo stood with his hands in the pockets of his hoodie, leaning slightly to one side like he'd been waiting forever. You know, Neo said, I don't show up because of bad math grades only. Leo sighed. You saw that? I see everything you feel, Neo said casually. It's like having front row seats to your emotional disasters. Leo frowned. Gee, thanks. Neo smirked and sat on the table across from him, legs crossed, posture relaxed, like the room belonged to him. So Jake traded your pudding, Neo said, and in your head that means what exactly? Leo stared at the floor. That I'm convenient, replaceable. Neo rolled his eyes so dramatically it could have earned an award. You think too dramatically for someone who barely talks. Leo folded his arms. He didn't even say hi. He just took it. He made a trade, Leo, not a friendship proposal. Leo shook his head. It felt like, I don't know, like he didn't care who I was. Neo leaned forward. Newsflash. He probably didn't. But that's not an insult. That's just lunch. Leo didn't answer. Neo hopped off the table and crouched down in front of Leo so their eyes were level. You treat every tiny interaction like a verdict on who you are, Neo said. But sometimes a pudding is just a pudding, and a cookie is just a cookie. Leo swallowed hard. It didn't feel that way. I know, Neo said, softer. That's why I'm here. He tapped the table lightly. You want to know what I saw? And Leo said nothing. I saw Jake choose your pudding, Neo said. Not ignore you. He wanted something you had, and he wasn't rude about it. He made a normal, everyday trade. Leo frowned. Normal for who? Normal for kids who aren't convinced they're invisible, Neo replied. Leo's shoulders slumped. What does that even mean? It means you don't talk, Neo said. You don't join conversations, you don't ask questions, you don't make eye contact. You've convinced yourself that you're a background character, Belisai. So guess what? People treat you like one. Leo's eyes burned a little. Are you calling me boring? Neo grinned. No, I'm calling you silent. There's a difference. Leo looked down at the cookie again. It just felt like I was, nothing to him. Neo sighed and sat beside him. Fine, let me put it this way. Instead of assuming you're worthless, why don't you test a new theory? Leo blinked. A new theory? Neo held his hands out like scales. Old theory. No one cares who I am. New theory. Maybe people don't talk to me because I don't talk to them. Leo looked skeptical. Huge difference. Neo nodded. Huge. Hey, he continued. So, tomorrow, during lunch, when you see Jake again, you go to him and start the trade. Leo's face went pale. What? You heard me. I can't do that. Yes, you can. No, I can't. Yes, you can. No, seriously, Neo. If I talk to him out of nowhere, he'll think I'm weird. Neo shrugged. He already thinks you're weird. You won't ruin anything. Leo glared. Wow, motivational. Neo placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, a gesture Leo never would have expected from, well, himself. You just have to speak first, Neo said. One sentence. That's it. Leo swallowed. And what do I even say? Neo smirked. That's the fun part. You're going to decide. Leo groaned. I hate this. I know, Neo said brightly. That's why it's good for you. The bell rang in the distance. Kids would soon rush back in to clean up, grab books, push chairs around. Neo stepped back toward the empty seats, and the air around him began to shimmer again. Tomorrow, Neo said before disappearing. One sentence. That's all. Then he vanished in a quick flicker of light. Leo stared at the empty space where Neo had been. So easy for him to say. He muttered, The next day, Leo stood in the cafeteria line. His heart pounded so hard it felt like the whole school could hear it. When he reached the dessert section, he picked up a pudding cup, this time on purpose. He scanned the room. There was Jake, sitting with two other kids, halfway through his sandwich. Leo's hands trembled so badly the pudding nearly slipped. He felt the urge to retreat to his hidden table, fade into the background, pretend Neo had never said anything. But he remembered Neo's words, one sentence. He inhaled, stepped once, twice, and approached the table. Hey, Leo stammered. Jake glanced up, neutral expression. Leo held up the pudding. You, want to trade again? Jake blinked, then shrugged. Sure, man. He reached into his tray and held out a brownie, bigger than yesterday's cookie, with chocolate chips glittering like treasure. Leo nearly fainted. He placed the pudding on Jake's tray and accepted the brownie with both hands, as if it were radioactive. Thanks, Jake said. Casual, unbothered. Then, shockingly, he added, Yesterday's pudding was actually good. Leo felt something strange. It felt warm, but unfamiliar. Oh, he said, cool. That was it. That was the whole conversation. Leo walked away, sat at his usual table, and stared at the brownie like it was an artifact. And then, Neo appeared. Not dramatically, just a subtle flicker in the corner of Leo's vision. Leo turned, startled. Neo stood beside him, arms crossed, smirking proudly. You didn't die, Neo said. Leo blinked back a laugh. No, guess I didn't. Neo sat down in the chair across from him. How do you feel? Leo thought for a moment. I don't know, he said. Not great, not bad, but, something. Neo nodded. That something? That's progress. Get used to it. Leo took a small bite of the brownie. It tasted better than anything he'd had in weeks. Years later, Leo adult would describe that moment as the first crack in a very thick wall. The day he learned that speaking didn't make him explode, that people didn't recoil from him, that he could take up 1 inch of space without the universe imploding. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't transformation, but for a boy who felt invisible, one tiny sentence was enough to start changing everything. And it all began with a simple, ridiculous chocolate pudding trade